DMACC. I've been here about 6 years now. Some of my background, I started as a television reporter in Des Moines and worked at WOI and WHO for 6 years. Then was hired as a communications manager at the Iowa Department of Economic Development, and then left there and had stints at 2 advertising agencies in Des Moines. So it has been kind of a diverse background, but I guess the thread in the whole thing has been communications. I've had an opportunity to work with some really great people. I've had an opportunity to do some training in New York at Young and Rubicam. So it's been kind of a fascinating journey, but I'm very glad to be at DMACC. Give you a little background. We have a marketing department is based in Ankeny, but we cover all of the 6 campuses and 3 learning centers. And we have a staff of 7 full-time people, and then we have about a dozen people that are either part-time, that are students, or consultants that work for us. So more than double our staff. And the demand is growing. And we have video and social media, and we have a lot of new components in marketing. And so our staff, full-time staff, resources are pretty limited, so we need some additional help. And we're very thankful that we have a lot of really great student support. We have probably a half a dozen students that work for us during the semesters, and then a couple during the summer. They do graphics work, and they help us with public relations and community relations, and so they do a really great job for us. Are there any questions about our marketing before we jump into this?
So marketing would be a good career then to get into if people that are...
You know, it is a great career, but...
It's growing that good or no?
It's growing, and it's changing. You know, when I was in college, it was traditional marketing, public relations and advertising. And social media and social marketing has just changed that so incredibly. It's opened up a lot of new opportunities. Mm-hmm. But in a recession, you know, marketing people are hit hard. Yeah. There's been a lot of layoffs in the agency business in Des Moines, and you know, companies typically cut back in marketing at bad times. And so, you know,
hopefully things, I mean, they say, and we keep, you know, keep our fingers crossed, it's all, things are going to turn around.
Yeah, I think things are getting better.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
But you know, marketing is a tough career in difficult times, and it's gotten a lot more competitive. You know, we had an opening for a graphic designer a couple years ago, and you know, the recession really hadn't hit that hard yet. We had 70 people apply for it, and the designer that we hired, you know, has awesome experience, and she's a DMACC grad, and then went on to finish her degree at the Art and Design Institute in Denver, and worked for a top advertising agency, and so you know, it's very competitive. So if you choose marketing, I think it's important to finish out a 4-year degree, and then you've got to have some practical experience. Internships are important, and you know, the more experience you have before you graduate, you know, the better off you'll be. Okay, sure. Before we get into the Viewbook, I just wanted to talk a little bit about what goes into a campaign, and if you have any questions, you know, please stop me. The creative process is what everybody sees. You know, coming out of the creative process is advertising and our social media campaign and radio and all of the elements that you see from a campaign. But there's months of work and research, and there's a lot of things that go into this before we get to the creative elements. And some of these I put down on the board, and I thought I'd just run through them real quick. The internal audiences, is, you know, that's an important element. The mood and attitude of the audience. our campaign a few years ago was Invest in Yourself. And that was a nice, I thought, nice feature for the recession that we were in, that, you know, it was important to invest in yourself and reinvent yourself. And it was a very basic message that, you know, you have to retool. And so that was our campaign theme over the past few years, because of, primarily because of the recession. Your brand attributes go into the creative process. Some of our brand attributes are that we are affordable, we're flexible. Some of the things, the other brand attributes that we want to communicate are that, you know, we're innovative, we're helpful, we're, you know, all of these higher level attributes that, you know, you want to put into that mix. That we're, you know, fresh, we educate the students so they have a lot of opportunities. Opportunities is one of the brand attributes. So we have a lot of things that you stand for, and a brand is how you are perceived by your audience, and that's absolutely crucial for an organization to have a strong brand. You know, if I'd mentioned some companies like Disney and Apple and IBM, you automatically think of things to associate with that brand. And they spend a lot of money and put a lot of energy into refining their brand, protecting their brand, and keeping that out there. And you can also have a car crash with the brand. And BP is probably the best known with the oil spill that they suffered in the Gulf last year. You know, all of the billions of dollars that they spent on branding went out the window with that catastrophe. And now, you know, they are trying to reinvent themselves and you know, trying to change that perception that they're anti-environment and they made a lot of mistakes. And so your brand is a very, very important organizational asset. Your message and communications, you know, what do we want to communicate to students and to audiences goes into that. Audience characteristics, you know, we have rural audiences and we have suburban audiences, we have older ones and younger ones, and so there's a lot of audience characteristics that go into this. Differentiation is, you know, where there's 24 colleges and universities that we compete against in central Iowa, and so we want to differentiate ourselves from all of the competition. Our relevance, why are we relevant? You know, why should people care about hearing from DMACC? So you have to take that into account. And then brand standards, we have a brand standards manual that we've put together, and all of our colors and our attributes and all of what is DMACC is in this. And so our brand standards are in the creative process. And then research. You have to have research along the process. How do people feel about DMACC? We have incredible awareness in Central Iowa. We have over 95% awareness. So, you know, that is already a given. The challenge is to make people feel good about DMACC and to want to look at us for their college and then to come through here, to walk through the door. So we have baseline research, and then we test what we do. So you take all of these elements, and then that's part of the creative process, and then there's testing in here, and you know, feedback from the audiences, and then once we get this where we're, you know, comfortable, it's tested. Enrollment management and all of the other parts of our internal audiences are on board. Then we come up with some creative elements and then test that, and then we launch the campaign. And Live Life Like You Mean It was tested very thoroughly. We were working with enrollment management, who we have a very collaborative relationship with. And then, then we have a launch date, and then we send it out, and we have it in the Viewbook, and all of our communication pieces, radio, TV, social media. And then, this is the scary part. Are we reaching our goals and objectives? Once you send it out, are you getting what you plan for, what you want to? Are these being met? And if they're not, you're in trouble. And then you have to go back. And so far, we've reached all of our enrollment goals, and we've had very positive feedback. So, this is pretty good. So we'll keep this theme and campaign for the next couple of years. And then the Viewbook is one of the elements out of that. One of the things that we tested, for example, was you want to differentiate and be different than other organizations. And part of the creative process, we took all of the people out and just had graphic elements. And when we tested that, potential students didn't like it. It tested a lot more strongly when we had students and potential students in there. So, that's one thing we took out and then we brought back. And then we test out colors and, how people feel about it, and what does it evoke, what kind of feelings does it evoke, and things like that. So that's the creative process. And then I wanted to talk just for a couple of minutes on the brand and what we do in marketing. And I look at marketing as a three-legged stool. And it's not very complicated, but what you do to meet these goals, that's where the complication and the difficulties come. Your brand, as we said, is how people feel about the organization, what kind of feelings and emotions does it evoke. And I think it's interesting, people have a brand too. You don't think about that, but you do. People have a brand. When you talk about Ashton Kutcher and Lady Gaga and just everybody has a brand. And people that are famous develop their brand and spend time creating their persona just like organizations do. And so that's something to think about when you're going for a job interview, and when you're in the classroom, you have a brand, and it's what people think and feel about you. So the brand is really the seat of the stool, and then the legs are advertising, public relations, and community relations. And then social media, marketing, and media are kind of the thing that holds everything together. We use social media in all of these elements, advertising, PR, and community relations. And this is really the 500-pound gorilla these days, is social media. It's really changed how organizations are marketing. It's changed the investment in marketing, and it's incredibly important. When I was in college, advertising was, it was pretty broad, and it was, television advertising and kind of the broader brand. And today, it's more one-on-one marketing, and that's what social media has done, is through Facebook and all of the other social media elements. It has impacted the traditional advertising and created a more one-on-one relationship thing that an organization has with people, which is crucial. So, in a lot of ways, it's made reaching out easier, but in some ways, it's made it more difficult, because an organization needs to be genuine. That you can't have a used car salesman and a plaid jacket, yelling at you anymore. It's a lot more, what can we do for you, and it's more consumer based. And you have a lot of consumer reaction. We monitor the social media networks to see what people are saying about us. And so you get, direct feedback, and it's immediate. And so, you have to join in that conversation. It was kind of interesting. I was at a presentation last year, and they were talking about the influence that social media is having. And Kohl's department store came up. And a couple of years ago, there was a gentleman who went into a Kohl's department store, and I guess it was just a mess. It was after a sale, and there was stuff on the floor, and the racks were messed up, and there was nobody to help, and it was just a nightmare for this guy. And so he tweeted about it and put it on his Facebook page. He had a really bad experience at Kohl's, and he got feedback from other people all over the country saying, I had the same experience. The customer service was bad, and they weren't helpful, and I didn't find what I was looking for. And this conversation turned into kind of a tsunami against Kohl's. And so when you went to Google and you type in Kohl's, the department store wouldn't come up. This guy's Facebook page would come up. And the conversation about how bad Kohl's was came up. And Kohl's responded by an official press release that they sent this guy, which was pretty lame. And it just really inflamed the situation. So rather than the company taking steps right away, it got worse and worse. And so finally they hired some social media consultants, and they're still kind of behind the curve even after that. But it really took a crisis situation before they reacted. So it's very interesting.
You have to be careful. Huh?
You have to be very careful, and you have to manage the situation before it turns into a crisis.
Well, yeah.
A few weeks ago, we had a situation where a student said some pretty bad things about DMACC, and I don't know if you saw that in the paper or on TV, but this guy was on the urban campus and said he was going to shoot up the campus and wanted to find somebody in Ankeny to do that. And he was blowing steam. We don't think there was anything behind that, but we caught that while monitoring our social media networks, and we called our security, we called police, and within a half an hour there were 2 detectives and 4 police cars on the urban campus, and when this guy came to campus, they arrested him, and
I think we all had an email right away too from Mr. Dennison.
Yeah.
I think every student, was shocked. Yeah.
So it was this guy was just blowing steam.
They were on it. Yeah, but you can't take that stuff lightly anymore, especially not after all the stuff that's been going on.
You can't.
No.
It's very serious.
And that's good that they did that. This shows that they're not gonna take nothing from no students from any campus. I mean, they're gonna be on stuff like that.
And the things we look for are, I had a difficult time in financial aid, or, I couldn't find a place to park. I mean, we look for trends that we can work with other parts of the institution to change things. I mean, we don't look for things
Right.
like this. It just
Right.
kind of fell in our lap.
Yeah.
But there's a company that we've hired called Radiant 6, and they're out of Halifax, Nova Scotia. And they have a very sophisticated tool that we have access to, where we monitor all of the social media channels. And it's called a river of news. And there's tweets and Facebook, and anytime that there's a conversation about DMACC, we are able to see that. And so it's not a big brother type of thing. It's more of we're concerned about what people say, and you know, if there's problems across the college, we want to address that. And, you know, before, a lot of that, we didn't have access to. And so now it's more of a tool to help us make the college be a better place for students. And so jumping back to the Viewbook, the Viewbook is one of the resources that we have to communicate to students. And you know, one of the challenges that we have is how do you communicate 154 programs and certifications and you know, all of the attributes that we have. And that's where the river of apps came in. And you know, you can see that in our advertising is that we have an app for all of the programs and certifications. And we were looking for a way to visually communicate all of the advantages for going to the college, and that was a graphic theme that we came up with. We want it to be fresh, we want it to be fun, and lively and interesting, and those are some of the brand attributes that we want to communicate that you know, you'll see in our advertising. So I think I'm talking too much. Is there any kind of feedback that you guys